time that Exhumed went on hiatus, I was not displeased by hearing that news. There was the bit of rivalry between Impaled and Exhumed, me exiting the band, but a lot of that had kind of already gone by the wayside. I was more focused on the project I was working on with like Ludicra and Impaled. But hearing that Exhumed was disbanding, I was like, well, there you go, chump. You kicked me out of your band. You thought I was going to go nowhere, and here the bands I'm in are still going. So have fun surfing in Hawaii.
After the band split up, I ended up playing with Repulsion for a while through Cole, kind of got me in the door. I had a thrash band in the Bay Area called Scarecrow that I thought was really good, and it kind of seemed like things were going to happen for, but just never quite came together. And then my personal life was a fucking disaster, so I ended up moving to Hawaii. I guess I was there for almost 2 years. After about a year and a half, at least my personal life kind of got sorted out, and I was at a place where I could focus on, like, what do I want to do? Obviously, I took a guitar with me to Hawaii, and I just kind of kept playing and started out in E, and then, after a couple of weeks it was in D, and then a couple more weeks I was like, I guess we're in B now, huh? And then these riffs started coming, and I was talking with Wes.
He's like, I'm moving back to California, so I'm going to be out there. Do you want to jam? And I was like, do I want to jam? Yeah, okay. And then I made a joke. I was like, well, maybe we should start Exhumed again. That'd be funny. Like, LOL, whatever.
And I felt like with Danny and Leon, we had a good lineup that worked, but we never actually did anything with it.
Harv sent me some demo songs, and they were really good. They were really fast. They were really pissed, and it felt to me like kind of a return to form.
There was enough interest. I think Maryland Death Fest was kind of sniffing around at getting us to do a show. I talked to Relapse, and they were interested in doing a record. So it was like, well, at least we can do this record, with Wes and Leon and Danny and I. And, we won't really put any pressure on it. We'll kind of just see what happens.
But I knew he would always come back and do it. And I was really excited for him to come back and do it, because I'm like, now Exhumed's going to do something. I
knew that it was going to be a comeback record or whatever. We're not just going to come back and be like, hey, here's some old songs and whatever. We're going to just come out swinging. Wes and I were getting together all the time and go over all these riffs, and we had all this material that we were pretty excited about. And, Wes is a great songwriter, great riff writer. He wrote like half the record.
I couldn't believe how much progress we were making, like, so fast. It was just like nothing. It was crazy. And it just all started flying by. It was like total opposite of how it was with the Garbage Days thing.
Before I even had a chance to learn a lot of these songs, like, we were in the studio recording them.
All that sounds like the live band. It sounds like this is a live. It almost sounds like we're just playing the album in the studio, like live or something.
It's funny, when I hear it now, I can hear songs. I'm completely out of gas. My voice is just kind of shot, and it's just because we were just trying to hammer through them as fast as we could.
Things kind of sort of quickly just snowballed from there. It felt like, hey, all that work that you put in, from your junior year of high school to being like 26 or whatever, like that actually amounted to something finally.
It's really when they come back with, All Guts, No Glory, that I think they kind of begin to find their own sound.
As far as like really getting the stability in the band, a big part of that is really owed to Mike Hamilton coming in on drums.
Matt Harvey was moving to the Central Coast, and I knew his brother. They used to work at McCarthy's. He was a bartender at McCarthy's. First, it was just something that I thought would be cool, just to hang out with them, drink some beers, barbecue, maybe jam some music, jam some tunes.
In fact, he was one of the people I had asked to fill in unsuccessfully in the early 2000s with Exhumed, but he was too busy with Deeds of Flesh. Fortunately for me, when I moved there, Deeds of Flesh had kind of stopped playing shows. And, you sort of dream as, when you're putting a band together, as you just find a Ferrari in a garage.
Mike's like too good. That was the problem. Like he's so good that it's like, look, dude, you just need to do a punk beat. There was like an unlearning curve, I think, maybe for him or something.
I saw this as an opportunity to work with an active band that tours a lot, and that's where I love touring.
I was a little worried at first because Deeds was sort of more in the tech scene, or they had grown more that way. Quickly, we were talking about Left Hand Path and Ember's Return and Terrible Certainty and Harmony Corruption and all these sort of touchstones. There was so much common ground there. And, Mike he's a lovely guy, and he's probably like the hardest working person I've ever met. I mean, if you want to think about somebody that is dependable and willing to put in the effort, I mean, that's like the mental image that comes to me right away.
He was really good at like organizing the band kind of without being like an asshole about it, without like saying you need to go over here. Like he didn't do that. He was real nice about everything.
Mike likes to think that he's band dad. Mike is band mom, and he's got that pure nurturing energy to be overbearing about what everybody is up to.
When we're on the road, we're family, and I feel like it's my responsibility to take care of everybody and make sure that everybody's got what they need, and kind of like the big brother role, I guess, being I'm the oldest in the band.
What Mike and I think really focused on was all the things that I never got into in the first incarnation of the band, which was like, we need to, secure our own transportation. We need a van, we need a trailer, we need a working rehearsal space, we need better equipment, we need all of these things that bands do. And another person that came along that was really integral to that is Alejandro Corredor, who has produced a bunch of our albums and engineered us and stuff. I met him in Hollywood, like right when the band was first getting together, and he was doing sound for us, and he was helping us get endorsements and kind of opening my eyes to all of these things that I had really neglected before. And it was like, oh, this is what real bands do. Like, and he's like, yeah, isn't Exhumed a real band? I was like, we're getting there.
Death metal show is there has to be an element of danger. It doesn't have to be real, it can be fabricated, but people have to think there's a chance something bad could happen.
What are some of those talents that you bring to Exhumed?
Dignity. I'm clumsy, but I have a good heart.
Dr. Filthy was deeply sort of lazy visual concept. It was very well-trod ground, but it was just something that was simple. It kind of took on a life of its own and evolved from a very, very basic thing.
Like Exhumed's always been a bunch of goofy guys, always doing, pouring blood on them. They've always had a chainsaw. Blood was always puking. Having Dr. Filthy, they could just concentrate into that one mascot guy who can do all of that stuff on stage.
Dylan was somebody that Mike brought in, and he was doing a radio show called Satanic Carnage in San Luis Obispo on the college radio station.
Hamilton just kind of pushed for just to take me along just for fun. I could help out, do some driving, be like a sober driver at night and stuff.
What I loved about working with Dylan is that he's what I would call a true eccentric. He'd be like, I found this link where I was able to download the music that they played at Japanese shopping malls in the 90s, and that's what we're listening to on this drive. And we'd be like, what the fuck?
We were touring with Macabre, and they would dress me up as like Albert Fish and the Zodiac Killer, and Harvey just saw like how much fun I was having with it.
You go to see a band live, the music's great, but it's a performance, it's theater. Holding a running chainsaw adds a lot of charisma. I should take chainsaws to like job interviews. You're going up there, maybe it's just vibration. If you have anything that's vibrating, you're gonna you'd be very confident. It was just a pun on Dr. Phil. I was just sitting at home just trying to come up with things that rhymed. I don't think anybody gets it. That's why Dr. Filthy spelled it P-H-D.
It was a great fit for Exhumed. I think for a lot of death metal bands, it probably wouldn't have been, but we worked with him for like 10 years, and, he basically did everything that didn't involve like playing the fucking music or whatever.
Harv wanted the band to be like his only thing. He knew what he wanted to do, and you could either come with him or not.
At first I was like, I don't want to do all this stuff because what happens if I, run out of money and I end up homeless or something? But I was like, let's just fucking do it. So we just went out and did like all these fucking tours, and it was crazy. Like it was just one after another.
They had just done All Guts, No Glory, and they needed a bass player. He's like, hey, you just quit your job. You want to join Exhumed? I think I was like the 5th call, too. I don't think I was first choice.
Getting Mike and Rob in the band and really feeling like, hey, we can go out and we can play. Like, if we want to play live 5 months out of the year, if we want to do 150 or more shows in a year, we can do this.
You know, in the beginning, it was running pretty smooth for a while. Eventually, we had like problems and stuff, like internal problems.
It kind of became clear that it was not going to work with Wes.
I just want to do this for the rest of my life. So that's why it was extremely disappointing at the end. I put my whole life into that band because that's all I know.
You know, it was a shame because he wrote half the songs on the All Guts record. Great riff writer, great guitar player, you know. But it got to a point where it was very fucking unpleasant, like being around him.
And then I had my own problems. I was just like really being an asshole. Like I was like drunk a lot and stuff. When you're on tour all the time like that, it's very stressful after a while because you can't keep anything in your personal life together. You know, you can't keep a girlfriend. You can't, like, your friends are like, hey, you're never around. I'm doing this now. And you're like, what? Well, everybody's doing that. Okay. And you're like, it stresses you out.
He was going through some stuff, obviously, and the band really wasn't helping him out health-wise.
He was in a place personally that he was not happy. And I think that just kind of like blossomed in every aspect.
When you got 3 people that are happy and one person that's deeply unhappy and making it everybody's problem, like it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly that, you know, the right move is to get rid of the one guy.
And another thing too that was a big problem was we didn't communicate with each other enough. If we would have been more social with each other and shared our views, I think maybe there would have been we could have relieved the tension of all that stuff.
Eventually it got to be too much, and after one of the tours, Harvey told me he was replaced. So it took a lot of doing to get Bud in the band too.
This one time he called, I had just quit my job, and almost a week since I had quit my job, and I was just it's like, all right, it's time to find a new job now. And Matt called like the day before I was about to start looking for a new job. And he says, you know, would you want to go on tour? And it's like, dude, you called at the right time. Like, yeah, I'll do it.
Bud's like one of the sweetest people you could ever meet. Everybody loves him.
Bud technically is a guitar player, and a great guitar player at that. And so coming back as a guitar player in the band, like I think he was pretty excited about that.
I always loved Bud. You know, he was one of the easiest people to work with, and I just thought this would be great.
We got offered bigger tours. I mean, we did that Summer Slaughter tour, which is a big one for us because it was just a whole new crowd of people that we wouldn't normally play for.
I had a super fun time, man. You know, at the time I was also just partying all the time, just drinking beer.
We'd be done at like 4 or 5 o'clock on this tour, so we go out there to literally barbecue, and it gave us all day just to get hammered. And then, you know, by the time Cannibal Corpse plays at 11 o'clock or gets down to midnight, whatever it is, then they're coming off the bus. And George Fisher, being the consummate professional, does not drink before he plays. But when he gets off the stage, he's got a bottle of Jack. And then, you know, he usually knew where to find me. And then that all hell would ensue after that.
Because Wes had been so integral in writing the All Guts record, you know, I felt like I had a bit to prove writing the next record. And I thought, well, what was missing was we need that slow, powerful, punchy, grooving number in the set. And so that's what Necrocracy became about.
We were touring like crazy on this. I mean, at least 6 months of every year. It was between tours. We literally recorded this album, went out, and I think put some finishing touches on it, and then went back on the road.
He had that record pretty much written and done and all kind of mapped out. For me, being the first record, I kind of just like fell into, okay, I'll listen to the material and play what he has on the pre-production.
I knew with having Bud in the band that I could open up some of the solo sections. I try to give him a little bit more space.
Matt would, he played the song. It's like, all right, so the solo's from here to here. I'm like, all right, well, let's go for it. And I remember I was pretty proud of this. My very first solo, first take. It's like, all right, it's a keeper. Let's move on to the next one.
Bud was just like a godsend, and the stuff that we were able to do, especially on Necrocracy, I think really like took advantage of that a lot. Mike and Rob and Bud and myself, we put a lot of great shows, but the thing is, I'm a heavy drinker. Bud at the time was an extremely heavy drinker, and Rob was even heavier than that. He's just an exuberant drunk. And a lot of times it's great. Like, I've had so many fucking amazing times with that guy, but there's been so many times when it's like, fuck, all right, Rob's out of control, we gotta leave.
He would either not drink and be totally fine. He was like awesome dude, like coolest dude ever. Or like the Gremlins, like sip of alcohol, boom, crazy.
Coming in, I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship, in the worst way, and then everything good started happening because, I started playing these shows. I joined Exhumed. It was a great thing. But I was still, I guess headspace a little rough, drinking like crazy. I mean, I went from being very responsible just a couple days a week, and I would let loose. I was out there just hammering.
It all kind of came to a head after we did the Eric Andre show. They wanted Pig Destroyer. Pig Destroyer couldn't do it. They're like, well, you guys are in California. Can you do it? And I was like, yes. And then I realized, shit, Mike's already back in Florida. Bud's already back in North Carolina. Like, how are we going to do this? So it was Rob and myself, and then we called Danny Walker to fill in on drums. I don't know if somebody knew someone, but there was somebody there that threw up, and there was somebody else there with a chainsaw, and whatever. It just sort of came together. Television writer is not like underground death metal writer. We were just basically in a room with unlimited booze. Rob quickly sort of deteriorated and started getting out of control. And seeing him act the way that he would act at our gigs, this is not acceptable behavior. Like, this is not gonna fucking fly. I just remember riding home and just thinking, like, this can't go on.
I love Rob to death. He's like a little brother to me, but for the health and the sake of the future of the band, it was just a necessary move that we had to do.
When Matt told me, he's like, hey, dude, we can't do this anymore, I said, I agree. I would have kicked me out a long time ago. I can't. It's not that I wanted to leave the band, but I think if I'd stayed in the band, I probably wouldn't be alive at this point.
I met Matt Harvey, honestly, as soon as he made himself available on Facebook, I just punished him. Dude. I just messaged him one day and I was like, I love your band so much, I have this band because of your band, basically, He just put up with it. Eventually, he and his wife Camilla came to visit me in Pennsylvania. They were on the East Coast. Camilla wanted to get tattooed, so I was like, why don't you guys come stay at my place and, I'll drive you around. We can go around, see Philly a little bit, stuff. And then, at the end of that weekend, Matt was just like, oh, we're going to need a bass player and a vocalist soon. You want to do it? And I was like, what? It was kind of mind blowing.
Getting Matt Slam in the band was awesome. But for one, he was an Exhumed fan, so he knew the material. He came out, he tried out, he nailed it. Vocals are killer. Great guy, love him to death. Brought a really cool energy to the band.
We did this tour with Napalm Death and Municipal Waste. That was the first time we got denied entry into Canada because we had a lot of DUIs and various things. Collectively, yes. Including myself. I don't know how. So that caused us to lose a bunch of money. The tour ended in Florida, and then we're getting ready to drive back to California. Our van died. And it didn't just need like, spark plugs. Like it needed a new engine. I had to call Relapse and be like, I don't know what to tell you, but like, can you just advance us $5,000? Because we're stuck in Alabama for a week. And they're like, sure, but let's figure out some sort of release that we can do to kind of make this back. And at the time we were kind of coming up on the 15-year anniversary of Gore Metal. And I thought, well, maybe we'll just re-record it. We can do it cheap and it'll still sound better than the original. And then you guys can have that and turn it around to get this money back.
He had just emailed me and said, we're going to be doing this re-recording. I would kind of like, if you would want to do vocals on it, to pay respect to the original. And I kind of feel like your voice is that voice for that record. If I don't do this re-recording, I'm going to look like a real fucking asshole. So I didn't want perceptions to reflect poorly on me. And it seemed like kind of a fun thing to go revisit. And I just said, fuck it. And, then I think he was kind of surprised by that answer that I was willing to do it.
He's like, I just recorded all the vocals for the fucking album. We'll see what they use. And I think he was really surprised. It's like, we just used all of them. I was like, he recorded all of them? This is great. The good thing to come out of it was that Ross was back sort of in the extended circle. And at the time, our bass player, Matt Slime, was sort of on his way out of the band.
I don't think I knew like what I was in for. I was learning how to tattoo as I got asked to be in the band, basically, at like a very crucial time when it's important for you to be in the tattoo shop a lot and so, perfect your craft. And I just decided that I'd rather tattoo.
That crossroad led us into like, okay, well, Matt reached out to Ross and kind of rekindled that friendship with Ross.
And we had this tour with Napalm and Voivod. The record was coming out at the time, and I thought, well, what if Ross came and did some songs?
Well, I don't really care about playing with Exhumed, honestly, right now, because whatever. But I do want to see some free Voivod shows. So I threw the idea in. I said, how about I just come and meet you on the West Coast? I can't do the whole tour, but I could probably do like 5 days and get time off work in time.
As we're playing the song, I'm just sort of, listening to the whole band. And I thought, man, heard me and Ross singing. I was like, oh, that sounds like fucking Exhumed. It was a car ride with Ross and I and his ex-wife. And she sort of shoved both of us in the backseat. And she's like, you boys need to talk. Like, you've both been drinking. Like, you should be able to just open up, just get it out. Whatever the fuck's been bothering you guys for 15, 18 years, just go.
Blasted off our ass, and about 4 hours of chit chat about the old days and where our headspaces were now and the arguments we had had.
And it was really like cathartic talk, It was like a therapy session or whatever.
That went really well. It felt good, and ever grateful that I went ahead and did those shows and made that piece.
And we had a few random sort of things coming up, and I just was like, I don't know, man, you want to just fill in on all these shows with us? Like, you want to just do it?
The more touring I've done with Matt, though, and the more we become dorks again, talking about comic books, that came full circle.
So we started playing a couple shows, and I was like, fuck, all right. I'm gonna get this guy back in the band.
He says, well, that was a pretty fun tour. Would you be willing to play some later Exhumed songs to go play this fest with Judas Priest in Mexico?
At that time, in the news was the Mexican cartel was at war with the Federales, so there's a lot of tension going on.
Both me and Harvey got flagged, so we both had to open our stuff.
Throw my bullet belt in my guitar case, not really thinking anything of it. They pull me aside and they pull out the bullet belt. I was like, oh, fuck.
They looked at my stuff too. I had a severed head and bloody hospital scrubs and stuff, but they just thought I was an idiot and let me go.
Finally, they kind of expressed to me like, well, we know they're fake, but this caliber of bullet is illegal. We have to take you and process you, but you're just going to stay in the cell overnight and then you get out in the morning.
They were asking for like a certain amount of money. They kept on asking, what time does your band play? What time does your band play?
We're like, what the hell's going on? So we're going back and forth with our booking agent.
So I'm just sitting in the kind of waiting room with like the desk sergeant or whoever the fuck it is, just watching Mexican TV. And finally he's like, well, I'm off. Like, nobody's going to be here, so I got to put you in a cell. I was like, okay. Finally, they call me out. And by then it's about noon to take my picture and my thumbprint and get all my information, my passport, this and that. I'm like, all right, cool. And they're like, oh, go back in the cell. I was like, wait, what? Time keeps dragging on.
Next thing you know, it's the show's, it's getting time for us to play, and we kind of just come to the reality that Matt's he's not gonna be here for this show.
Mike is freaking out. Bud's freaking out. I'm not gonna say I was freaking out because honestly, I'm not in the band. If shit goes wrong, it goes wrong. It's not on me. However, they're talking about canceling, and I'm just like, yo, in Latin countries, you just don't cancel unless like everybody's in jail.
We can't afford to like just fly down here and not get paid. Like, so just whatever, just play the fucking show.
Festival announced that Harvey he's being detained or got arrested or something, but they're gonna play anyways. And everyone goes, yeah.
We convene. Me and Bud go over the songs. We're talking about like, okay, this has too many guitar harmonies. Let's keep it simple. Like we're gonna cut just a couple songs and then talk about like, okay, I'm gonna take the vocals here. You're gonna take the vocals there. Neither of us know the fucking words.
Even going back to Anatomy is Destiny, the songs that I did have actual solo vocals on, I don't know those lyrics either. I don't know. I mean, I know nothing.
I'm like, okay, Bud, you're gonna announce the songs, right? And he goes, no, you've announced songs. You're in like other bands. And I'm like, I'm gonna be announcing the songs for this band I got kicked out of like 15 fucking years ago. Sure, why not? The world is a funny place. Let's fucking do it.
I think Ross tried to say in Spanish that sorry's super short, guitar player is in jail. All the fans thought they thought that was super funny, and they thought it was super cool.
20 minutes later, here comes Matt walking in, like just almost in time to play the set, but not quite.
I get dropped off backstage. I always remember this. I was really hungry, I'd just been sitting in jail. And so I go to the catering tent and they're like, do you have your pass? Do you have your meal ticket? I was like, no, I don't. I'm sorry. And I'm about to leave. And then Ben, who was playing guitar for Carcass at the time, they were playing the festival. Ben sees me and he's like, right, this man's been in jail all day. Give him some fucking food. He's had a terrible experience.
And the irony of that is in this festival, they had all these vendors out there and they were selling bullet belts right there at the show. So Mac didn't even have to travel with the bullet belt. He could have just brought some money, buy some there, and wear them on stage.
And it was only a few weeks later when Matt writes me again and says like, well, seemed a little weird to talk to you about this Full Force festival, but I was going to see how the show went and see if you wanted to rejoin the band.
This is kind of where we're at. This is what we could do for you. But we all think that this is Exhumed.
At the end of the day, I said, well, I got my other projects. They're priority, but I am having such fucking fun doing this. Like, it's kind of irresistible force that I'm just going to have to go ahead and play bass and sing in Exhumed again.
Ross seems like the perfect bass player for Exhumed. I imagine he's the person most people want to see there too. He's got the best growl out of anybody.
He was one of the people that determined what we were about. And that was something that was determined by Ross, Cole, and myself. And I think if you take away any one of the three of us, then it becomes a very different band.
Exhumed's better with Ross in the band, right? It was a great decision. It was the right decision to make. And I'm stoked that he's in there. And I think it does bring back some of that fun and that back to the kids.
I like concept albums when they're good. I like to mention Hey Tross is like one of my favorite albums of all time. I wasn't looking for a concept album, but I was kind of just looking for new stuff to sing about. We were already working with Ross a little bit, and I thought like I need his help to finish this record.
Harvey had come to me during that short run I did with Napalm Death and Voivod, where I was just jumping on. We were in the car, and he's like, "Hey, like you've done a concept record." I'm like, "Yeah, we did like Impaled, Death Afterlife, and some other projects I've done." He's like, "Well, I want to run this by you because the next Exhumed record, I think I'm ready for a concept record." I'm like, "That's cool. Like that'd be interesting."
And I sort of went on a weird like Wikipedia binge, And I ended up reading about the Burke and Hare murders. It's got grave robbery, it's got murder, it's got anatomical dissection and this sort of pathological angle. And, you know, there was even sort of like a socio-political kind of side to it, which we didn't really get into, but, you know, after doing Necrocracy was kind of interesting as well.
And I said, that's really cool. I think you should do that. Like, how could you get more exhumed than talking about two real life people that were exhuming dead bodies and then moving on to murder?
Totally different vibe from what we're normally doing. And, you know, it was something fun and something creative to do and introduce a different side of Exhumed to the fans.
I'd gotten really into transcribing all of our songs and, you know, doing like guitar tablature stuff. I kind of had this idea of like, oh, you can just write music for any instrument. And I thought, well, this is sort of the cinematic concept. And I knew Matt Widener had done a lot of these kind of orchestral mock-ups and stuff before. So I worked with him on doing all the interludes for the record and stuff. And, you know, he kind of helped my arrangements a lot. But I really wanted to make it so that the interludes were based on the riffs from the song. And it was all sort of kind of a holistic piece or whatever. And, you know, without Ross and Matt Widener, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to pull that off.
Turned in a really thoughtful record. I liked the motifs, the light motifs throughout the record. I couldn't touch it. I was like, I can't. I was so excited to record Death Revenge because of what it was trying to achieve. And that was kind of the higher echelons I had always kind of wanted to do in music. And death metal is like, it's like whatever kind of dumb shit you have, just always be trying to push the envelope. No, you don't want to go prog. You don't want to do that. But like within the boundaries of what Exhumed can achieve, you should always try as hard as you can.
I left the band the second time. I just couldn't do all the touring. My wife, Jackie, moved out here. I couldn't get the time off to go on tour. I didn't want to have to go start over, you know, coming home from tour, trying to find another job again.
The first person I thought of was Sebastian.
We did a tour with Obituary, Carcass, and Noisem. And Noisem was the first act on that tour, and just watching that young band and their dynamic and just like how much energy they had live and just like, holy shit, this band's fucking bringing it.
In 2016, I get a phone call one day, and it's Matt Harvey. Wonder what he wants. This guy never calls me. Okay. And I pick it up, and he's like, hey man, like my band Gruesome is playing Maryland Death Fest, and we were wondering like if we could use your basement to like practice for a few hours like before the show or whatever. And I was like, yeah, of course. So they all came over and did their set. They were super fucking quiet the whole night, so we were like, dude, we could like push it a little bit. Like, if you guys want to jam a little more, like, let's fucking play some shit.
We jammed in Sebastian's basement before Maryland, both with Exhumed and with Gruesome. There was one point in his basement when he was playing these like Chris Poland licks from Peace Sells, and I was like, huh, I need to listen to this kid a little bit more. And then he started playing like some George Lynch shit, and I was like, huh, okay. He's not just like a, you know, punk rock, like grind kid. He's like a rock kid, as well as being a punk rock grind kid. And I was like, he's going to be perfect.
Lights go down in the city. Like, not even like a month or two later after that, I get a phone call very early one morning. He's like, oh, like, you know, I was just wondering, like, if you'd be interested in coming out and doing some touring with us. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. What do you guys need? You know, like, merch guy, driver, guitar tech? And he's like, no, we want you to play guitar. And I couldn't believe it. Like, legitimately could not believe it.
He basically just had kind of everything that, you know, I sort of valued in a guitar player and as a band member, you know? So in my mind, I was like, okay, this is going to be the new guy. And, you know, in this case, I've been wrong many, many times. As anybody who will watch this whole thing will learn, I've been wrong a lot. But in this case, I was 100% right. And, Sebastian just really ended up being like the perfect fit for the band.
The way I found out was Exhumed had left for tour without me because I had had a previous engagement. And I said, well, look at that. Our tours are intersecting in Las Vegas. And so I was like, cool, I'll meet you at the show. You're like 2 blocks away. I'm going to like finish our set. I'm going to run over. I'm going to jump on and do some songs with y'all. And that'll be like fun, at least like what little I could do during that time. And I run over from the other show I played, came in, and there's this tall ginger kid on guitar. And I was like, where the fuck is Bud? Like, what the fuck happened to Bud? What happened to my bandmate?
On the guitar, make some noise for him, man. It's cool in that, Mike and Ross and I are all considerably older than him. So having that sort of youthful energy and enthusiasm is like a nice kick in the ass for us.
There was like kind of an instant chemistry of 2 completely idiotic hams on stage who just love to be stupid. And he wants to do the dumb moves. He wants to look like a glam rock star. And I love doing that shit. We like doing the back-to-back. We're doing jumps. We're eyeballing each other. We're trying to like outmaneuver each other and do cool tricks to make the other one laugh. And it's that kind of energy live that I really feed on.
As much as the last 10 years of doing this has felt like things have been basically getting better as time has gone on, once Sebastian kind of became entrenched in the band, it really kind of felt like I was like, okay, this is the lineup.
Like a veteran baseball team where they call up some kids from like the minors, and there's just this like exuberance and enthusiasm and excitement that they can bring to the whole adventure. And I think that's probably happened over the past several years with Exhumed, because it does feel like they have kind of like a second life, with obviously Ross rejoining and then, with Sebastian as part of it. It's kind of interesting.
Meet me up. All right, man.
Definitely.
Get you that later, bro.
All right, cool.
So.
How you doing, the best? Feeling good?
The best. Remember, hey, man.
You're looking good. Are you feeling good?
Set it up. All right. So anyways. All right, guys, we're ready. Can you just play it really quick, Mike? Just go ahead and actually play it, and we'll just...
As we continue making records, the challenge always becomes, all right, so now what? Like, what haven't we done? With Death Revenge, I felt like that was the most elaborate record that we could do while still being Exhumed. If we would have gone any further, we would have kind of gone off the rails, In terms of a food metaphor, like, Death Revenge is like a full combination with, different meats and different sauces and fucking artisanal mushrooms and drizzle. And then horror is just a cheese pizza. It's just like, that's it. How many ingredients can we take away and still make something that is good?
When Matt first came to us with the idea for the album Horror, he had mentioned that he wanted to go back to a little bit more of like an old school approach.
We showed you what Exhumed could do, like trying to be our smartest. Now we're going to show you how fun we can be at our stupidest.
Run for your life, fight for your death.
time, he was working with Matt Olivo from Repulsion. They were doing a band together called Expulsion.
Kind of like just gotten a little bit of that old Repulsion verve in it, which is all of our favorite bands and definitely a mainstay in our musical repertoire in the back of our brains that we're stealing from constantly.
This was more kind of like our version of like a Repulsion record, just short and sweet, blast them out, memorable songs.
That style of, like grind and death metal is much more up my alley. So my idea was, I'll just write a couple songs and see if he likes them at all. And if not, like, no big deal. But every song that I wrote for the record, he was like, oh yeah, this is great. Like, didn't even offer any like revisions or anything like that. It was just like, yeah, it was cool. It's going on the record.
All right. You guys know Sebastian Phillips right here, our guitar player, right? Everyone say hi, Baz. We were so drunk when we were writing the last album. How drunk were you? We were so drunk we let him write a song. So this is that song. This is The Red Fucking Dog.
I like the old VHS kind of 80s thing. It was kind of riding a wave of retro that was kind of going on anyways, that we were all having fun with. Found a video store for us to take band photos in. It was just like we could kind of cut loose and show a little bit more of that tongue-in-cheek. Now that's not even tongue-in-cheek. It's firmly out-of-cheek humor Exhumed like to partake in once in a while. Like, we weren't that serious when we were wearing leather and spikes. We were always having fun. We were always laughing about it. Mike had this plan to build a studio and kind of like focus on making Exhumed more of a business.
Every band has to have a place they can rehearse, and the more control you have over your own destiny is kind of like the idea of what Darker Corners is.
At least a place where we can demo stuff and then take it to a real studio and get things done there a lot quicker, so we're not wasting time.
Once we found this place, we decided, well, if we're going to build a rehearsal room, we might as well just take the time to turn it into a place where we can actually record and start recording our own records.
We have a screen printing shop, we have a recording studio, like we have our own transportation and so on and so forth. We're, largely self-sufficient.
It's just us creating our creative space and having control over our own, music and financial destiny, I guess.
All Guts No Glory was like, hey, we might have a path to go on. And then by the time we did the horror record, it's like, and we can really control most of what that path is and how we proceed down it.
I love in this band, in Exhumed, I can kind of finally just sit in the back seat, be a passenger princess, and just do my parts and write some music once in a while, write some lyrics once in a while, and just have a good time. It's something luxury I have not been afforded before. Matt had approached me, what do you think about like asking old members like to add some songs, because we're going to be like 30th anniversary of this band existing, and maybe we could like kind of celebrate the family. And I was like, that's a great idea. Well, then the world stops.
The pandemic gave us the time to bring in Matt Widener and bring in Leon and bring in Bud and bring in Mike Beams. Allow them to help us write the record, because it's great. I can only write so many riffs.
To me, it was a really cool idea, because being a fan first, it was really interesting to hear something that Mike Beams would write.
And the Mike Beam song was actually, I was like, okay, this is like, it's some faster, riffing. And so I was like, kind of tapped into some Deeds drumming for that actual song. So that was pretty fun.
Definitely those guys are talented enough to see like kind of where Exhumed had been and Exhumed's long history, that we could all come together and put together a record that sounded like a cohesive whole.
All those guys and many, and Jake and Daryl and of course Cole and so many people along the way like that, they're all part of that journey of getting to sit here and talk about this with the expectation that somebody would give a fuck. So it was nice to acknowledge that with the record in a way that I don't think other bands have done, and and again, it's something that we haven't done.
To the Dead and having everybody come back, it's like looking back and looking forward at the same time, and like kind of raising your glass and giving a cheers, like to the Dead.
Even though I left Exhumed, I don't feel like I've left Exhumed because it's still very important to me, very personal, and I am so proud of what they've done.
Being able to see them play live with that new status and as tight as they got and as professional as they got, it was a joy to be a part of like the early days when we were figuring stuff out.
So knowing Matt for going on 30 years now, what he has done is matured a lot in his outlook on how to work with people, how to view his own contributions and what they mean. And I like to think I've done the same, which is why we've been able to meet in the middle and become fast friends again.
As we all get older, it's tough to make time for people. And one of the greatest things about playing rock and roll with your friends is that, well, we have to hang out. We got to get together and fucking write a new album. Like, it's been 2 years, guys. Clock's ticking. You got any fucking riffs?
Exhumed is going to have a lifespan. It's got to have an end date. I'd like to keep going as long as my back will hold out, as long as I'm still having fun doing it.
I consider everybody that has come and gone to be part of the story, and I'm happy with where I'm at in the story now. There's a lot of people that have been in the band that have, for me personally, just really helped me to grow and figure out what it is that I'm trying to do.
Look back at a legacy that, Matt is at the center point of, that has had branches reach out to so many other bands and so many other people and touched a ton of lives. And we can all be pretty happy about what was created there and what it did.
I think my 13-year-old self would be stoked, I think he would be like, all right, I'm glad I picked up that guitar then,
You're still playing rock and roll with your friends.
Yeah.
Also, we should go to space. We want to go to the moon. I want Exhumed to go to the moon. And we're going to drive cyber trucks to the moon. That's the next thing for Exhumed. Jetpacks and rocket ships. We're going to do it.